Welcome to this week's Session Spotlight. I'm Paige Taylor. Social studies standards for Oklahoma students are taking center stage at the Oklahoma State Capitol as some lawmakers are wanting to pass a joint resolution to disapprove the proposed standards. These proposed social studies standards from the Oklahoma State Department of Education have sparked controversy, both in the way they were put together and the content of them. The legislature can pass a joint resolution through both chambers to send them back to the Board of Education, but they have to do so by May 1st or the standards will take effect. Both the Senate and House Democratic leaders filed joint resolutions to disapprove these standards in late March. Democrats held a press conference this week calling for their Republican colleagues to pass one of their resolutions or file their own. They say the standards are both biased and developmentally inappropriate. Here's some specific concerns from Democrats. They list that kindergartners would be identifying the principles of economic systems and developing an understanding of a market system in local, national, and global settings, which Democrats say is developmentally inappropriate. As far as things they feel are biased in the standards, they list that students would learn to identify the source of the COVID-19 pandemic from a Chinese lab, as well as the economic and social effects of state and local lockdowns. They also have concern over students having to identify discrepancies in the 2020 election results. Here's some of what Democrats had to say during their press conference.
We are here again, and I want to remind us why we're here, why this is still important. What we're talking about right now is a full attack against our shared values in our schools by our superintendent. And what we need to focus on is that we expect our shared values in our school, but that's the shared values of fairness and safety for our children. So we need to be clear that what we're talking about today is what we teach children in every single school across the state, and also what we test those children on in every single school, and also how we evaluate teachers. And whether they're good teachers or not. That's our social studies standards. It's about what we teach about history and society. So it's incredibly important. That's why we cannot have business as usual and why we continue to focus on rejecting the social studies standards. We're calling on our colleagues to hear our resolutions or bring forward their own to make sure we reject those. The window is closing right now, and we need to focus on our students first.
A reminder to all Oklahomans, and specifically to my colleagues across the aisle, we and our state superintendent, we rank 49th in the nation for public education and last in the region for teacher pay and per pupil spending. And right now, the state superintendent is not focused on improving education outcomes or increasing funding for our public schools. Instead, he's solely focused on boosting his own partisan political agenda with these social studies standards. We want to remind the public, the superintendent, Republican legislative leaders that the House Democratic Caucus has made 6 calls to Republican leadership to form an investigative committee to investigate the actions and inactions of the state superintendent. And now this is our second time calling on Republican leadership to listen to the concerns of everyday Oklahomans, our teachers, and our families regarding the social studies standards. Even the governor, who replaced 3 board members on the State Board of Education, has said, bring these back to us. It has become increasingly clear that the political pressure of the state superintendent placed on legislative leaders has become more powerful than the voices of our constituents. And so we're here today to, again, make a call and ask our colleagues on the other side of the aisle to listen to teachers, listen to our parents when they say they want improvement in public education and not pandering to partisan politics.
The same day as the Democrats' press conference, Governor Stitt held his weekly press conference where he said it's up to the legislature to make a decision on the standards, but said he has a concern with Board of Education members voting on something they weren't originally shown.
Well, first off, yeah, the legislature's in their court right now. So the way that works, those are approved by a board, and then they go to the legislature for final approval if they're in session. So certainly the legislature needs to act on that. The thing that concerned me was the mechanics, how it was done. So it's been showed to me from the board members that they were emailed a copy of those standards, but then there was a different standard that was sitting on the desk that they actually voted on.
The day after both the Democrats' press conference and Governor Stitt's, Senate Education Chairman Republican Senator Adam Pugh filed Senate Joint Resolution 20 to disapprove the standards. Here's what the resolution says. It says questions exist regarding the transparency of the subject matter standard adoption process. Pugh also notes in the resolution that $33 million it would cost to implement the new standards through the development of new curriculum and new textbooks, and says that Governor Stitt and the 3 newly sworn-in members of the State Board of Education have requested that the standards be returned. You can read the full resolution on okcfox.com. A bill that has stirred up controversy was in a Senate committee this week. It's a bill that would make the theft of a shopping cart a misdemeanor, punishable in the original bill by a $1,000 fine or a year in jail. But that changed this week. Now community service has been added to the list, and the fine amount has been dropped to $500 instead of $1,000. Some have argued that this bill aims at targeting those experiencing homelessness, and some have questioned why this bill was filed when theft is already illegal.
This bill creates a specific offense for larceny of a shopping cart, which is punishable by the 3 options that were given. And I think we've talked about those a little bit, but I'll go back over. It's either up to a $500 fine, 30 days of community service, and that's is the real, to me, the intent of this is to be able to have the judge be able to put an offender on community service and hopefully get them into something productive. It will be a start maybe for a different type of life. So what it really does in this, it adds a paragraph B in section 1702 of Title 21, which is larceny of stolen property from a retailer.
A bill that was heard on the House floor this week would prohibit the governor from closing a business during a pandemic without having documented scientific evidence that the business contributes to the spread of the disease. This bill passed on the House floor in a 74-15 vote and has since been signed into law by the governor effective July 1st. The governor will have to give notice and provide the opportunity for a hearing for any business that is determined to be non-essential or said to contribute to the spread of the disease. Some argued this gives the governor more authority and power in these emergency situations.
You share my concerns that this isn't really going to fix the problem as you see it, because even if there is real science that backs up a safety concern, that people just won't agree with that, and that they will fight that and call that science fake.
Senate Bill 672 unintentionally gives the governor more authority and more power by allowing the governor's office to determine what is appropriate and what is enough scientific evidence in this particular case when it comes to shutting down businesses within our emergency management system.
Every House Democrat present voted no on the bill, but House author of the bill, State Representative Kevin West, says this is to ensure due process for businesses.
What this is doing is it's setting up a process for due process for the business. It does not prevent the executive order from still being issued. All it's asking is that you give notice, and if they want to protest that, then they have a seat in front of the governor to state their case.
And that's your session spotlight. Check out my Capitol reports every Monday through Thursday on Fox 25. I also provide a look ahead at what bills will be heard on Sundays. For even more in-depth coverage, head over to okcfox.com.